After these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed, mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself, and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. The kings of the earth who committed fornication, and lived luxuriously with her, will weep and lament for her, when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn for her, for no one buys their merchandise any more. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, and cinnamon and incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. The fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, who became rich by her, will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who traveled by ship, sailors, and as many as strayed on the sea, stood at a distance, and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like this great city? They threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone, like a great millstone, and threw it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down, and shall not be found any more. The sound of harpists, musicians, flutists, and trumpeters shall not be heard in you any more. No craftsman of any craft shall be found in you any more. And the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you any more. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you any more, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you any more. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and of all who were slain on the earth. So now it's saying that an angel came down from heaven, saying Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. It's saying that this government that controls the entire world, which is the spirit of Babylon, is fallen, which means the government will now collapse, and the whole system of the world will collapse, because it has become a dwelling place of evil, and that all the world has profited and prospered through the evil of this beast government. It says the merchants became rich. This means that the businesses and all the global economy has prospered because of this one world government. Then it says, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. It's telling us, the Christians and the Jews who are reading Revelation or are listening to the warnings of the end times, to not be a part of this beast government, to not partake in what the world system has created in the end times, by not getting the mark and not following the Antichrist. Otherwise, you'll share in the punishment. It's not telling Christians or Jews or anybody on earth at this time, because there are no Christians and Jews on earth when this happens. It's a warning to us now for the reader not to be deceived and to not be a part of this government system of the Antichrist. It's a warning for us now. Otherwise, if you're a part of that government, then you will share in the plagues and the punishment of God that the beast will receive. It says, render to her, which is the harlot, the city, that is the capital of the beast government. Render to this city just as she rendered to you, which is to you, the Christians and the Jews. This government killed Christians and Jews. So it's saying render to her and repay her double according to her works. It's saying that God will repay the people of the earth that were against the Christians and Jews, that killed them and caused the people to be tricked, and will repay them with double the punishment. It says, I sit as a queen and am no widow and will not see sorrow. So it's saying that the city of this beast government thinks that nothing can stop them and that nothing bad will happen to them because they rule the world by the beast government and by the mark of the beast, by the mark of the Antichrist. They think that nothing is going to happen to them. Even though they're being punished by God, they still think that they're in control. And because of this, it says, therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. So in one day the city is going to be completely destroyed. It says death, mourning, and famine. So the destruction of the city coincides with the time of God's wrath. It's a cumulative destruction, because we see that there is famine because of the bowl judgments that turned water into blood. So the world is in despair because of the wrath of God. People are hungry, people are dying, and they are all under the wrath of God and are weeping, and it says mourning. They are mourning the death of the people of the earth because of this wrath. So we see from the last chapter that the 10 rulers of those nations will come against the city that has control, and they are the ones that will come to burn the city to the ground. Maybe because of God's wrath, the 10 rulers might feel desperate that they can be better served as their own nation without the help or without the alliance of that city. So they go against the city and destroy it in one day. But ultimately we'll see that God destroys it completely at the end of this chapter with a giant asteroid. So it says, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment. So the nations of the world will be sad for the city because it was destroyed, because it was the center of the world. It was loved because of how rich and prosperous it made the entire world. That city was the cause of a one world government that made the entire world rich. It's like when the attacks in New York on the World Trade Center happened on September 11th. Everybody in the world saw that on television, and people were sad for New York and sad for what happened to the city. So when that happened, people felt bad for the city and felt sad for the people of New York. But in Babylon's case, in the city of the beast, that city being destroyed has global ramifications. So the entire nations of the earth will be sad and mournful because when they see the city destroyed, because now with that city destroyed, the entire world system will be impacted. It says, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. We see that from businesses and companies around the world, people that made money because of the wealth of the city all over the world are weeping because now the money is worthless. Nobody buys their merchandise anymore. The entire city is completely worthless. And so every export and import of the city, from food to precious metals to, it even says, the bodies and souls of men. So there's slavery going on. Every type of trade and economic finance or monetary system becomes worthless in that city. And because of that, it says that in verse 19, they threw their dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing, and saying, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships of the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. And also in verse 15, the merchants of these ships, the merchants of these things who became rich by her, will stand at distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So why would they be that distraught about a city being destroyed? If it was only that one city being destroyed, yes, it will be sad, but to be so sad that they weep and wail. This means that the world economy tanks, is destroyed because this city controlled the economy. The economic functions of society was based in that city. So when it's destroyed, it takes down everyone with it. They are the ones that cause the world to be involved in this system by the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast ties everyone financially. So at this point, there is no paper money. It's all digital. But it's backed on the trade of this city, where the entire world is functioning because of the city. Everything has to go through this city in order to be prosperous. So the world became rich by the wealth of the city. And since the wealth of the city is nothing now, the city is worthless, then the rest of the world becomes worthless as well. So why are they weeping at a distance? Would it be because there's radiation? Is it because of nuclear bombs that the gold and the metals are radioactive? And when precious metals like gold and silver and the like are radioactive, those metals become worthless. They are not able to back an economy. So with those metals being radioactive, they become worthless as well. And that is one of the first things that the city is known for. It says on verse 12, merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls. So the main commodity of the city was gold and silver, which means it's the money of the world. So by this city being destroyed and all of its riches being worthless, then since the world became rich by the city, then the world loses its wealth because the city has been destroyed and the city's wealth has been destroyed. And with that, it says, rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. The city is destroyed, and with this, it avenges the deaths of the Christians and Jews. It's avenging all the evil that this beast government has done. Then it says, a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more. So a millstone is a type of stone that is used to grind wheat or to grind olives. It's a grinding stone, and it's used for making different types of foods. But it's a very heavy and large stone. And it's saying that a giant stone was thrown into the sea. So we can say that it's an asteroid that God sends to the earth to finish the job of completely wiping out the city off of the face of the earth. This fulfills the vision in Daniel chapter 2 of the dream that the king Nebuchadnezzar had of a statue that would show the different empires of the world up to the end times. And the final empire was destroyed by a giant boulder. And so what we see here is God destroying the city of the beast with a giant asteroid. So with the city destroyed, it will never return ever again. It speaks about the harpists and the musicians, or the craftsmen, and not even the light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore. The voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard. The place will be completely desolate. The city will never return ever again. And so with the city destroyed and with the beast government now gone and God's wrath fulfilled, it's now time for Jesus to return and to rightfully rule over the earth for 1,000 years. But the armies of the earth that were deceived by the Antichrist and the false prophet are still waiting for him to return so they can go to war against him. And we'll see what happens in the next chapter.